Good afternoon, I'm Karen Kozier-Phillips. C-News is live at noon. To the top of our newscast, the Oilfield Workers Trade Union is continuing its call for the removal of the head of security at Petrotrin for a proper investigation into the security arrangements at the state-owned company. Their action comes following a breach in the company's security earlier this month when 44-year-old Curtis Pear jumped into one of the company's tanks at the Trinmar tank farm in Point Fortin and died. The workers laid down tools as they intensified their protests against the management of the company this morning.
We are saying to the company that the incident that took place 2 weeks ago in Point Fortin at Trinmar tank farm was preventable. It occurred only because Petrotrin had a major lapse in their security arrangement. And you cannot have an investigation to determine the exact nature of or the cause of that incident when it is a security breach and the security chief is still in his job.
Mr. Roger says that the union is fed up with having their complaints ignored in relation to safety, and they are standing firm against the security head.
Investigation, an independent investigation, free of the influence of the chief of security who was responsible for security arrangements in the first place. For that to happen, he ought to be sent on administrative leave. And the company is resisting that because there's an attempt to have a massive cover-up because there's some level of nepotism taking place with the top management and the chief of security. All of those things do not benefit the company, and certainly the country loses as a result of poor management and nepotism at the top. I want to put an end to that.
The OWTU President General said this is the first of many exercises to highlight what they call the poor level of management at Petrotrin. As a result of the action this morning, the OWTU said there will be a disruption into the production of oil. Petrotrin's Vice President, Human Resources and Corporate Services, Neil Derrick, said the company had launched an investigation into the matter, and a meeting was held with the OWTU after raising concerns. He said a meeting was held on Monday with the union, and it was agreed since the union raised concerns about the first investigation, a new one would start, and the chief security officer would not be sitting in his position. He went on to explain that the CSO was moved and an administrator placed in the position. The acting CSO was assigned a project to review the company's vulnerability assessment, especially the facilities close to communities. He said the acting CSO was also asked to look generally at the security plan as raised by the trade union. Health officials are expected to conduct sanitation exercises at the Sacred Heart Boys Roman Catholic Primary School today. The school was temporarily shut down yesterday due to a chickenpox outbreak. Over 20 students are said to have contracted the virus. Speaking with C-News this morning, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, Devanand Sinanan, said all health and safety procedures were followed and the school was evacuated.
CMOA officials would have advised that the school be closed and the necessary sanitization be undertaken because chickenpox is highly contagious, and therefore it would have determined that there is a serious health risk at the school and certain precautionary measures should be taken in order to prevent the spread of the disease to other students.
He could not say when classes would resume. The West Indian Tobacco Company still remains unhappy with the additional 15% tax on the price of cigarettes. However, it does not expect the consumption levels to decline. Speaking on Good Morning Trinidad and Tobago, WITCO's Managing Director Jean-Pierre Ducoudray said over the past 3 to 4 years, consumption levels have fallen flat, noting while some may stop using the products, others will start. But he said people are seemingly moving away from the premium products to the more commodity type ones, and this is hurting the industry.
More accessible to these consumers. So what we are seeing is actually a move from the legal to the illegal, not necessarily because of the taxes have people stopped consuming. And we highlighted to the government, actually in 2015, we actually paid less excise in 2015 than we did the previous year because we've lost volume to these three brands who are not paying the taxes. So the government has also collected less revenue as a result of this.
Mr. De Coudray also expressed concern that people may switch to imported brands, which could hurt the consumer, especially since they aren't sure about the environment in which these products are being made. He went on to say government should keep an eye on the sale of tobacco products, as he believes government will not be able to collect the $60 million it expects to get.
Consume and use local suppliers to the tune of over $100 million. So we do add to the local economy as well, and just being here. Yeah. So so the sustainability of that footprint is always something that the government needs to be aware of, because at the end of the day, if we continue to be impacted by this black market trade and our volumes continue to decline, at a point in time, it just won't make sense to keep the factory here. And that's something that we have to be aware of.
And also starting today was a 7% tax on online purchases and a 20% tax on alcohol products. You're watching the CNews Live report at noon. Remember, you can keep up to date with all the latest news on our website at ctvtt.com, or you can check out our Facebook and Twitter pages at CNews Live. DNA analysis on human skeletal remains discovered in the Faizabad district on June 24, 2016 have been confirmed to be that of Brazilian national Odair Bezerra Lins. Lins, 55, had been employed as an electrician with OAS when he went missing. He lived at Gulfview, Lara, Maine. Forensic experts at the Forensic Science Center relied on blood samples which were taken from the daughter of the victim on July 5th and used to determine the identity of the remains. The cause of death is undetermined. Well, there's been some improvement in the sea conditions along the northern coastlines in Trinidad and the sheltered coastlines in Tobago. However, the numerical weather prediction models continue to forecast northerly swells with periods of or wave intervals in excess of 13 seconds. This was confirmed in a release from the Met Office at 10 a.m. It said the swells will gradually decrease over the next 24 to 36 hours. It went on to say the long period of swells may be low amplitude, but as they approach shallow waters, the wave heights can increase sharply. Consequently, there will be a localized disruption to sea bathing and near-shore coastal activities, and all marine interests are advised to take caution. The Met Office said conditions are affected due to the recent peak in spring tides and therefore will be aggravated during high tides and this evening at about 6:45. Now for a look at the weather forecast.
Staying cool in the scorching heat will be the top priority today, with a high set in Tobago of 32 degrees Celsius and in Trinidad 35 degrees Celsius. For possibly the fifth straight day, 35 degrees Celsius will be on the cards, with 36.2 degrees Celsius on Wednesday, equaling the record set on Monday for the hottest October. There is the chance of just a slight shower coming across the hills, but this will do very little to dampen the heat. Meanwhile, beaches and bays along the north-facing coasts continue to experience battering waves. The Met Service advising everyone, especially small craft operators and sea bathers, to exercise extra caution. Long-period northerly swells of 14 seconds continue to sweep the Caribbean, with waves of 2.5 meters, possibly getting up to 3 meters out in the Atlantic, with easterly winds of 50 knots expected through this afternoon. These battering waves will worsen during the high tide, which is at 7:30 p.m. That is the latest weather, and I am meteorologist Ian Wallace.
While following our coverage of Corinne Ford's viral video, which shows her being harassed and stalked by 3 men on the streets of Port of Spain yesterday, public opinion has been split. While some have expressed shock, disgust and outrage, others have described the young woman's actions as a total waste of time, since it would not change Trinidad and Tobago's street harassment and catcalling culture.
Corinne Ford herself is thankful that her story was aired, but is urging women to be careful on the streets and has called on the authorities to do more to deal with the problem. We pursued the comment section of our Facebook page, CNews Live, to get what some of you had to say about Sohini Gray's story. Brenton Brandon Martin said the trend is troubling, disgusting and heartbreaking and puts an ugly twist on people's views of men in Trinidad and Tobago society. While Anushka Vani Puran said that sadly this is something most women have to deal with all the time and there are no signs that it will stop anytime soon. She said while it is okay to flirt, women should never be harassed in this way. 2 other commenters, Candy Weiss and Andy Central, applauded Ms. Ford for her bravery and thanked her for posting the video to highlight the issue. Rishi Harinanan, CNews.
And we're interested in hearing what you have to say. You can join the discussion on our Facebook page at CNews Live. We will have another update on this story for you later today. The Divali Nagar will be opened tonight, and police officers will be out in their numbers to ensure the 9-day event is incident-free.
We would like to assure all persons that the police will be out in full to ensure their safety and that of their property. This effort will be inclusive of members of the Traffic and Highway Branch, Highway Patrol Branch, and the Air Support Unit to deal with any traffic situation that may arise on the Uriah-Butler Highway.
And special focus will be placed on ensuring there is little to no traffic along the Uriah-Butler Highway.
Special emphasis will be placed on proper parking and the smooth flow of traffic along the highway and the roadways in the vicinity of the Divali Nagar site. Patrons are reminded to secure their valuables and do not leave such items as laptops or handbags visible in their vehicles.
Meanwhile, the National Council for Indian Culture did not get the amount of money they requested for their staging of the Divali Nagar. Yesterday, they got $800,000 from the Minister of Culture. Despite not getting the amount requested, the NCIC's Public Relations Officer, Surajdev Mangaru, said they will have to make it work.
$1.4 million. We'll have to find ways and means to raise the additional $1.4 million because our request for government subvention was $2.2 million. So we were hopeful initially, but now we are thankful that at least we have something. So we're not expecting anything at all in these trying times, but that amount will be insufficient for us to continue. But Divali Nagar must go on. It must go on. We have lifted the Nagar to a high standard now, and it's costing quite a bit of money.
He explained where they get their funding outside of government subventions while signaling the opening of the Nagar.
New is the booth rentals, and of course we have some sponsors coming on board, but that is insufficient because the cost to mount that Nagar is a tidy sum of money. It starts tonight promptly at 7.
In a public announcement, TSTT operations at External Contact Center support vendor have been fully restored. In a statement, the company said it was back up and running from 11 o'clock last night. It said customers can once again contact 824-8788 for landline, broadband, IPTV and security services, 6411 for directory assistance, and star 100. TSTT said it will be reviewing the incident with the vendor in an effort to minimize any further risk of this being repeated. One clinical psychologist says that she supports the call for smartphones to be banned at all schools. However, she said there are other angles to look at as well. On Tuesday, Couva North MP Ramona Ramdial called on the Minister of Education to put measures in place to ensure students are not allowed to take their smart cell phones to schools, as too often it is used to record fights, sexual activities and watch pornography. Speaking with CNews on the issue of child pornography, clinical psychologist Marsha Yusuf said even if phones are banned in schools, there are other places where children can access the material.
Cell phone in school is just one, as you said, just one way in which it could be treated with. It does not prevent the child from using the cell phone outside of school. It doesn't prevent the child from using the cell phone in the home. So the conversation has to involve parental issues. It has to involve societal issues. It has to involve education. The schools, yes, are a major part of that, and how we treat with sex.
He said pornography as well as music and certain television shows can contribute to early sexual behavior in a child, which can lead to high-risk behaviors such as unprotected sex and sexual intercourse outside of a committed relationship.
The early exposure may increase a child's appetite to want to experiment and to want to actually carry out these acts, and it might increase the levels of child-on-child sexual abuse.
While voting is underway in the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association election, the polls opened at 7 o'clock this morning and are expected to close off at 5 p.m. Incumbent President Devanand Sinanan told CNews, so far the voting process has been smooth.
I haven't heard of any irregularities thus far, so I am assuming that voting has gotten off to a very smooth start.
6 positions are up for grabs, including President, First Vice President, Second Vice President, Third Vice President, General Secretary, and Treasurer. Last evening, nurses who attended the UWI School of Nursing received their pins, which signifies their readiness to serve members of the public at health institutions across the country. The nurses graduated with BScs and MScs in nursing. Pro-Vice Chancellor and Campus Principal of UE St. Augustine, Professor Brian Copeland, while addressing the graduates, said by now they all should be aware that being a nurse isn't just about getting good grades.
No book can teach you how to cry with a patient. No class can teach you how to tell someone's family that their parents are dying or dead. No member of faculty can really teach you how to find dignity in giving a patient a bed bath. These qualities can only be nurtured and encouraged. Being a nurse is about being able to love and care for people when they are at their weakest moments.
After being tied to the men's tournament previously, the ICC Women's World T20 will be a standalone tournament in 2020. An International Cricket Council board meeting backed Australia's plan to host the event 6 months apart, with the women's tournament in February and March and the men's event in October of the same year. All 5 previous Women's T20 World Cups have been staged parallel with the men's events, with semi-finals and finals played as double headers. There is already a standalone women's event scheduled for 2018 in the West Indies, with the ICC yet to confirm a host for the men's tournament version. With legitimate concerns over the ability of the Bahamas to be ready to host 3 major sporting events next year, Prime Minister Perry Christie is adamant all will be in place.
Pressed financially in the restoration effort following Hurricane Matthew, the sporting community is wondering where that will leave the busy calendar the country has in hosting international events in 2017, and if the government plans on pulling out. Already confirmed the World Relays, FIFA Beach Soccer World Cup, and the Commonwealth Youth Games. Well, Prime Minister Perry Christie put those fears to rest. He says despite the country's position, he expects the Bahamas to make good on its obligations.
Normally, in the face of a disaster, you may exercise the option of moving on, but it's a matter that we feel that we should continue with. We feel it will be good for the population. We think the expense is manageable.
The World Anti-Doping Agency has warned 3 more countries to shape up or else over flaws in their drug testing programs. Brazil, Greece and Indonesia are among 5 countries who may be added to the World Anti-Doping Agency's non-compliant list. Azerbaijan and Guatemala are the other 2 facing censure. All 5 countries have until November 10th to prove their compliance. Should they fail, they risk being declared non-compliant when WADA meets in Glasgow, Scotland on November 19th. CNews is live at noon. Regional news is up. Now here's a look at what's happening in and around the Caribbean.
ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson has confirmed the company's commitment to exploration and said this year's deepwater oil discovery off Guyana would be easily viable for development at today's prices. Guyana holds resources estimated at 800 million to 1.4 billion barrels of oil equivalent. He said the fundamentals of long-term demand for new resources, equivalent to 5 Saudi Arabias over the next 25 years, justified continued exploration. Now, Guyana government has held talks with various religious organizations as it seeks to become the first Caribbean country to establish an inter-religious television station. A government statement issued after the consultation on Tuesday noted that the government and religious officials discussed the impact such a station would have on society. Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu, who holds ministerial responsibility for media development, said that the consultation was a continuation of what began many years ago. Less than 24 hours after the Grenadian Attorney General announced citizens will no longer be voting in a referendum for a new constitution on October 27th, the Supervisor of Elections, Alex Phillip, named November 24th as the new date. In a statement, Phillip said he was advised by the Governor General that the 7 writs issued on September 23rd this year have been revoked. Now, Jamaica has joined scores of countries in sending relief supplies to Haiti to help the hundreds of thousands of people who have been displaced by Hurricane Matthew, which hit the Caribbean nation on October 4th, killing more than 500 people. 8 Jamaica Defense Force soldiers were dispatched to the French-speaking country to assist with the distribution of relief supplies. To Dominica now, and a motion of no confidence against Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit has been defeated after a verbal clash between the opposition leader Lennox Linton and the Speaker Alex Boyd Knights, who allowed the government to use its majority to vote down the measure. Mr. Linton was yesterday piloting the motion, calling on the Parliament to express its lack of confidence in the leadership of the Prime Minister when, during his presentation that was supposed to have lasted 45 minutes, he was halted after the Speaker claimed he had made a disparaging statement about her. And that was a look at what's happening in the region.
An anti-United States rally in the Philippines turned violent Wednesday when a police van smashed into demonstrators outside the American embassy in Manila. Protesters had gathered to demand an end to the presence of U.S. troops in the country and to support a call by President Rodrigo Duterte for a foreign policy not dependent on the U.S., the country's longtime ally. Here now is a brief look at some other stories making the international news headlines.
Donald Trump has refused to say that he'll accept the result of the U.S. presidential election if he loses in a bitter final debate with Hillary Clinton. A powerful typhoon has hit the Philippines, destroying houses and forcing thousands of people to leave home.
Iraqi-led forces engaged Thursday in the most intense fighting yet in the battle to liberate the city of Mosul from 2 years of brutal ISIS rule on day 4 of an offensive that's been met with fierce resistance from ISIS fighters. We have more in this report from the BBC.
Suddenly today, the tempo of fighting has picked up. These Kurdish fighters, known as the Peshmerga, advancing from 3 different points to attack villages northeast of Mosul held by ISIS militants. The firefights intense.
The progress is very quick, thank God. We are not facing lots of resistance because really the IS gangs have collapsed.
On their target list today, this Christian village, which they want to recapture, is currently in the hands of the Islamist militants. At one point, the Peshmerga open fire on what they think is an ISIS drone, fearing it could be carrying a bomb. They miss. To the south, another important advance. Iraqi special forces on the move for the first time since the offensive began.
And that brings us to the end of the CNews Report at noon. I'm Karen Kozer-Phillip. Have a great afternoon.